Hi, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the COSE Small Business After Hours podcast. I am Megan Kim, Executive Director for COSE, joined by Kevin Johnson, COSE Board Chair and Managing Partner of Next Gen Interactive. We have been having so much fun on these podcasts, and we have another great guest today. I know it's going to be a high energy discussion, and we're going to learn a lot. It's always interesting how we find our next guests on our podcast. I actually met this person, Kevin and I actually met this person on our most recent COSE member meetup. So this is my plug for the COSE member meetups. You never know what can happen on a COSE member meetup. These are opportunities to bring small businesses together to talk about topics that are pertinent to your business. We've talked about equity and inclusion. We talked about buying local. We talked about selling and keeping your customers during a pandemic. So they are a great chance for entrepreneurs to connect and share with each other. So make sure you come to one of those, check our website, cose.org. So I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to introduce our guest today and get us started.
Megan, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Great being back to do another session, another podcast. We love these COSE After Dark sessions. Today we have the pleasure of having with us Miss CC President. That's right, CC President. And she's Vice President of Partnership Development at Presidential Consultants. So it's probably not surprising, it wouldn't be surprising if she's been referred to as Madam President, but we are happy to have you with us. CC, welcome.
Thank you so much. I usually say I'm #the First Lady.
I love it. I love it.
Well, it's such a pleasure being here with both of you guys, Kevin, Megan. I'm really grateful for you.
Well, thank you. And to Megan's point, we did meet you at a meetup, and you reached out, and after finding that meetup, obviously of value. But, you know, so I'm going to put in a plug, the second Megan's plug about our meetups. So
and let me third that plug because it really was the power. It was just the power of hearing all these amazing messages from entrepreneurs in our local area. And I'm going to tell you, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, but I hadn't really, my business has often been national or global, and I never took the time to focus on my local community. And it was like a lightning bolt. So I am so grateful for you guys putting that together. I'm excited to stay engaged. It was absolutely of value.
Well, you remind me of myself in terms of a local person who's not necessarily worked local or been local throughout my career. So there's a little bit of boomerang to me. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your journey and kind of how you started on this entrepreneurial path and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny for that, Kevin. I always laugh because I always think of my journey being a journey of, if I had to narrow it down to 3 terms, it's a journey of love, it's a journey of possibility, and a journey of improbability. Really, because, for the past 20 years, my company, Presidential Consultants, which was founded by my husband, for the past 20 years, we've been building better workplaces. And, we do that through, evidence-based training and coaching solutions. But that is nowhere near where I started, right? Like, I joined the business 4 years ago, and my journey had always been, one of really building businesses or building partnerships, right? And so I'm a Cleveland girl, born and bred, grew up on the east side of Cleveland, just single mom. I think my dad was in jail before I was born or something crazy like that, right? I think I met him at 12. So just the story of improbability, but, had this mother who just had this desire, and myself had a desire for, just something more, something greater. So
improbability, but possibilities, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was improbable that a kid, from the east side of Cleveland paid her way through high school. I attended an all-girls Catholic high school, and I was trying to get out of Cleveland public schools and paid my way through high school.
How'd you do that?
Okay, so he was actually.
Or can we talk about it?
Yeah, no, totally. It was that.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Right, exactly. It was really
And look, I'm a kid from the East Side too, so you know we get things done, but you know,
we find a way, right?
find a way.
We find a way. So I was attending a public. I had attended Catholic school earlier in my life, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 6th grade, something like that. And when my mom could no longer afford it, I needed to return to public school. My 9th grade year in public school, I wondered if I was gonna survive it, literally. I saw kids get shot in school. I saw people have drug overdoses in school. And I knew, even as a 9th grader, that I was either going to be pregnant or dead by the time I turned 18 if I stayed there. And so I did some research, and I researched all of the Catholic schools. That's all I knew, right, in the area. And I called and asked about scholarships and figured out which ones were on the bus line, because of course I didn't have a car. And once I found this school that I could afford, that I knew I could afford if I got a job, it was a little Catholic high school on the corner of 18th and Superior called Erie View Catholic High School for girls.
Yeah.
And I had worked everything out. I'd gotten the scholarship money, and I said to my mom, I negotiated with her. I said, listen, Mom, I can't do another year in this high school. I said, I promise you, if you will pay my first semester, I was going to turn 16 that December, right? After my 10th grade year. It's like, if you pay for that first semester, I promise you on my 16th birthday, I will get a job and I will pay my tuition moving forward for the rest of my high school career. And I still get emotional thinking about it because it was such a huge burden for her financially. I mean, she had just buried one of her daughters and assumed responsibility for that daughter's 2 children, you know, already struggling to raise her last of 4 kids. So it was a big financial burden. But I'm going to tell you, on my 1 month following my 16th birthday, I got a job downtown Cleveland. And I worked almost full time. It was literally like 30 hours a week. And I paid my tuition for the rest of my high school career. And was so grateful. I ended up earning scholarships to attend John Carroll.
Yep.
And that's where I met my soulmate, at John Carroll University as a freshman.
Wonderful. There's a story of determination and creating possibilities out of what seemingly was an impossible situation, which is what we do, and really is at the core of entrepreneurship, taking control and moving forward. Let's talk about your business and when you started that and how all of that has progressed, because that's a fascinating story. And quite frankly, you know, I think it fits into some of the things we're doing with respect to workforce. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So a little over 20 years ago, my husband, Anthony President, was a statistic. Okay. And that statistic was, there's a stat that came out that said 90% of Americans say that they hate their jobs because of challenges in the workplace, challenges with their boss, or just not feeling valued by the company. And so a little over 20 years ago, he was at a job where he was living that statistic. And he said he knew it was a great company, but if there was somebody that could help them with their environment, the culture of the company, you know, he felt that it could be an amazing place to work. And so he took a leap of faith, right? An improbable journey. And he started Presidential Consultants, and he started it literally as a small little, just him. And he's traveling up and down the highway, you know, training he trained a lot of social service workers, and he trained a lot of teachers and COSE volunteers on, again, just workplace culture issues.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you, he's so incredible at what he does. He has such a depth of knowledge of the areas that he focuses on that, people kept calling. And within about 6 years, he had grown his little bitty one-person shop to the #1 human services training company in the state of Ohio.
Awesome.
And again, just that other improbable journey. And so now we're able to, in addition to our base of human service customers, we love helping people in the helping profession. So now, throughout the helping professions and hospitals and large nonprofit organizations, smaller nonprofit organizations, we're able to help those leaders and those organizations really live out their vision, and empower the community that they serve. So we're just forever grateful, for what we get to do.
Right.
Okay, all right.
It seems like you and your husband are a perfect match, right? Persistence, resiliency, vision. We're going to get this done and do it because we said we're going to do it. So what's it like working with your husband? I know Kevin has some businesses with his wife as well. So what's that like? Has it been challenging? Is it exciting? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
You know what, Megan? It's okay. So I'm gonna admit, my husband and I, we feel like we were a match made by somebody in heaven, and we were like, I feel like he was designed to be my husband, and I was assigned to be his wife. Like that, like I feel like I am in the office of Mrs. President. Like that's how it feels for us. So for us, every moment together, when I say this, I mean literal pure joy, right? So now, but with working together, it's really interesting because a lot of my background, before I joined our company, about not even 6 years ago, I'd run a number of different nonprofit organizations. I'd been the director of workforce development at the DC Chamber of Commerce. So I'd done a lot of things. I built my own businesses. And for the decade prior to us getting back together, I had really been working as an executive coach. I love coaching leaders, right? Leaders of organizations to grow those organizations. And so when I put on my coach hat and try and coach my husband, it always feels, very strange. But over the past 6 years, I've had to learn how to coach him in a different way. It's hard to explain, but I can't just be Coach CC as I get to be with a lot of my other clients. I have to be Coach Wife CC. Right. But the beauty of that really showed itself at the beginning of the pandemic. Because at the beginning, in March of last year, so the way our business works, my husband is, there's a total of 9. Well, we're 9 now. There's 10. We just brought on a new trainer. I'm very excited for her, Cleveland girl who lives in Atlanta. But he is definitely he's our #1 trainer in our company, and my husband, we keep him booked. Usually he's booked about 18 months in advance. And organizations, they just don't miss a date because they know it could be a long time before they can get him back there again.
Nice.
So it's a really beautiful problem. We've 98% of our customers are repeat customers. We've done in the last decade, we've done zero marketing. Like all our business is all organic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and most of his dates were in person. 99% of his dates were in person. That's how people love him.
Sure.
So when the pandemic hit, and 100% of his dates were canceled. It was a very scary time for him. It was a very scary time for him. I mean, talking about a man who grew up, you know, in the hood of Cleveland, who had built a business that could, you know, provide an amazing life for his family, send his kid to private school, buy a beautiful home, right? Do all the things that he wanted to do. And all of that was in jeopardy as of March of last year.
Yep.
But Coach CC was able to look at him and say, okay, so what has to happen in order for us to decide that this was the absolute best thing that's ever happened for us? You know? And when he really could hear that question and own that question, and then sit down and we could have an open dialogue and plan out what it could look like. I'm going to tell you, the pandemic, you know, we were like everybody else. It was a challenge. It was a challenge where our revenue dropped by 30% and our profits increased by 42%.
Interesting.
Right?
Interesting.
Because we asked ourselves that question, right? Because we were really able to dig in and say, what if, right? What if, how could this possibly look and be the best thing that ever happened for us? And
Wow.
it's been a gift.
Wow. Outstanding. Hey, so you know, there are a number of other entities in your market segment. How do you guys differentiate yourself? And I know you don't market, but what do you what's the differentiator for you all?
Yeah, you know what? Transformation is the difference for us. Transformation. So unfortunately in our industry, because a lot of companies, organizations are oftentimes looking for check the box kind of training, a lot of companies in our industry provide those check the box services, and it makes it easy for companies to say yes to them, right? That's not the way we do things here. You know, I spent a long time in, you know, in the personal development industry myself. And so you know, our vision is about empowering people. And we know that, you know, with knowledge and skills and support, people can be empowered and they can live the lives that they choose. And so our differentiator is we really look for inspired organizations who want to live their vision, who want to create an impact. And so it's interesting because, you know, our clients recognize that we're not just going to come in and do some check the box training, that we're going to stay and make sure, and we're going to require their people to dig deep so that culture shifts, so that there's transformation in whatever area we're doing. So right now we have a really big project that we're working on with an organization out in Akron. And they're having some significant challenges in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, you know, and they had another company come in before us, and that company came in and did some check the box kind of work. And nothing changed in their culture. You know, again, we were founded on that idea, my husband having that idea that he wanted people to love where they worked. You know, and when you can help an organization shift their culture and help the people inside of the organization heal themselves so that they can shift this culture, there's a different workplace. You know, people work better.
So I consider that one of the most challenging things. I've been in the strategy space a lot, and one of the things that we found obviously early on, and it's you know, it's a well-documented fact, is that you can create the greatest strategic plan for an entity that's going to transform them. But if the culture isn't able to accept it, you've got some major challenges. I will move to the current day where we are dealing with workforce issues that have to deal with technology to a large extent, and the major disruption that causes in workforce, and the culture that has to be there to accept that. What are you guys doing with respect to that type of cultural change that's necessary for companies to be digitally transformed and Industry 4.0 relevant?
Yeah, a lot of that. Thank you for that. A lot of that. We do a lot of work on intergenerational management and leadership as well. And so a lot of those challenges we find come in that intergenerational leadership space.
Yeah.
So we can empower leaders. So a lot of what we do is about empowering leaders. And how can we, right? Like, how can we help people get on board with this is where we need to go? Now, because we are real partners with the organizations that we work with, and because we work with inspired organizations, we're very clear that with some people, it just has to be, some people have to be coached up, some people have to be coached out. And we're comfortable because of the partnerships that 98% come back, Kevin, right?
Yeah, no,
So we feel emboldened to tell them the truth.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because that's always been my experience with organizations, is that you can change the CEO, you can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, those mid-level managers are the ones that dictate whether you're going to be successful or not. You have to quickly evaluate their ability to transform, their ability to change, their ability to adapt to the new world. And if they're not willing to, the organizations with which they manage aren't going to move.
Absolutely.
And so your great strategy dies on the vine, because these entities at the branches aren't going to let it happen. So coached up or coached out. And so, yeah, okay, I'm with you.
That's it. Okay. And it takes an inspired organization, and that's what we call them inside of our company. It takes an inspired organization or an inspired leader,
right? Yep.
Right, to really be bold enough to make some of those kinds of choices.
I love it, Megan.
Have you ever had to say to a company that came to you, you're not ready? Because as I'm listening to you, you have to have a business that's ready to really change, and that's going to be uncomfortable. Have you ever said, you're not ready for us yet?
Megan, let me tell you my number one compliment I've ever gotten. I did some work for the Plano Chamber of Commerce in Plano, Texas. And I asked the director, can you give me a quote about what your experience was? She said, companies, just be ready. We actually don't accept all companies. Mm-hmm. And that was a tough decision. Now it's an easy decision for me. It was tougher for my husband, again, coming from that background of, I gotta do this. I gotta hustle. I gotta do this for my family. Right? Like, coming from that mindset. That was a hard transition. So you want to talk about a hard conversation inside the president household. That was one of them. Right? But it was one of the best decisions that we made and I say we lovingly released, right, some clients that just, that didn't want their people to transform, period. They had no interest in transformation. Yeah. And so we were able to lovingly release them. It's been such a gift. And we've only been doing that for I've been around, I've been inside the business since 2016. So it took me about mid 2018 to get that one.
And that's so smart when you get to that point, but it's tough when you're, to your husband's point, when you're hustling and you want to, number one, maybe it's an ego thing, but you want to try and you want to feel as though you can be that difference maker. Yeah. But when you reach the unmovable, you've got a couple of responsibilities. One is you have to protect your brand, and then you have to protect your people. Right. And so you just reach that point where a combination of success allows you to actually see what the differences are between the opportunities to be able to succeed and not, and be able to say, walk away.
Yeah.
You have to be able to walk away, and it's not easy. I know we've had to do that with one of our businesses, and you've got to protect our brand. You have to protect your people. And
you know what?
It's not going to happen. You got to be sharp enough to say,
You do.
bye, Felicia.
And you know how I was able to, what part of how I was able to convince him? So I know my math. I know my numbers, right? Like I teach money math. I believe in money math. I understand money math, right? And so when I was able to show him, right? Look, babe, this is the math. This is what it's costing us, right? This is what it brought in. This is what it's costing us.
Mm-hmm.
And when you can, if you can understand your math, if you can understand your numbers, it can absolutely transform the way you do business, the way you look at business, the way you interact in business. It will transform everything, but you got to know the numbers.
That was rich. That was rich. I think that a lot of businesses run, they survive, but they don't necessarily understand the math of the business. And one of the things that we like to focus on is, okay, so what's the net profit margin? And where you're and if you're not in a certain spot, one of the things, let's talk about new entrepreneurs for a second. I want to hear your advice about that. But one of the things I talk about to new entrepreneurs is, well, I'll listen to you first, and then I'll talk a little bit about it. What are your thoughts about if you're talking to people who are just getting started, doing a startup, thinking about it, just getting their feet wet? They've got an idea, they've got a dream, they've always wanted to do something, whatever the case is. What are your thoughts?
It's funny. I used to coach a lot of new and aspiring, is what I call them, new and aspiring entrepreneurs. And there are really two kind of pieces that I really have them start with. And the first one is understanding themselves and really growing themselves. And what do I mean by that? I can't tell you how many, and maybe because I worked with a lot of women, I believe this impacts women more, but I can't tell you the number of women entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs who had challenges around pricing or, charging somebody for their service, or around sales. And I'm like, look, you're not in business, you're in sales. Okay. You're in sales. And so you have to understand that. And so I challenge people to start by growing themselves and doing the work to understand their value, to own their value, to own their worth, period. Because if you don't have that on the inside of you first, it does not matter how good you are at what you do. Mm-hmm. It's inconsequential if you're not gonna require somebody to invest in you. It doesn't matter. So that's number one.
That's good. And
then the second thing is about, and again, it goes back to really knowing, right? Like know your numbers, know your industry, know your trade, your thing, your gidget. Like you gotta know, you have to know it like nobody else knows it. Now, that's not to say these aspiring entrepreneurs I'm getting ready. And they're like, like in a game of double dutch, right? And they're back, I'm getting ready. I'm going to jump in a minute. Right? Like, no, it's not that. It's not that, right? It's not that. But again, you have to know that math. You have to know your industry. You have to know your trade.
Yeah.
Don't take forever.
And I will amen that, and I like to focus on that whole issue of your trade and understanding that, and understanding the expectation. A lot of people have dreams with respect to, I've always wanted to do this, and my view is that is great, that's wonderful. It's going to take this, and this, but please understand that traditionally that business has a net profit margin of this. Are you going to be okay with this? Your success is going to be fantastic, but your revenue, your margins are going to be here.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, okay? Yeah. You're not going to be better than such and such over here, right? or if that's your dream, please understand their margins are here. Okay. So, you know,
and this is the definition of a margin, by the way, right?
Right. And so I don't want you to be disappointed at the fact that you are completely, you've done the work, you're on it, you're whatever, but you chose a business and an industry where the net profit margin is, you know, 5-10% as opposed to 40-50%.
Right.
Okay, those are big difference in terms of outcomes that are going to really feed the dream that you have behind the business that you want to start.
That's it.
So I really want, it's the numbers. Okay.
It's the numbers.
The first part of what you talked about.
How did the kids say? It's the numbers for me.
It's the numbers. It's the numbers. But there was richness in what you said in the first part. I can tell you when I first started out, you know, I'm a technology guy, so I was not used to selling. I really was not used to selling. I got over it because I had to eat. Okay, so I had a mortgage to pay. Okay, so you kind of get over it because of the requirement to survive. Right? It's all about some of the things you talked about. You survived to start this, and it began the possibilities. Okay, so having been through some times, you know, helps you get through some other times.
That's it.
And figure out how to make these things happen. So that was rich. I enjoyed that. Megan, you have a follow-up?
I was just going to say, I can't believe that we're at the end of our time already.
I know.
I knew that our time together, we're going to have a CC President number 2 kind of session, episode 2. Such great advice from both of you. This was such a great conversation. I learned a lot. I'm sure a lot of the folks that were listening learned a lot. And Cece, we will have you back. It would be really fun to have you and your husband too.
Gotta do it. Let's do it.
I'm thinking what we might do, Megan, is it would be fascinating to have Cece and her husband and have Connie and I and just have this conversation about entrepreneurial couples.
Yes.
And how to actually do this, because it's an art to do this as a couple. Now, you can have all the God-given, appointed, assigned, everything Cece talked about. But hold on.
Right.
That is a great idea. All right,
I love that.
Schedule. That is coming up next.
So anyway, okay, I digress.
Now, Cece, thank you for joining us. An absolute blast. I knew it was going to be a great time with you, and you have so much more knowledge to share. So we will definitely look at having you back and do this couple session. I think that would be a blast. So thank you all for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cece.
Bye, everybody.